Hello and welcome to the Global View on this Thursday. I'm Andrew Gagan. Great to have you with us here at ausbiz. Well, a decisive victory for Donald Trump in the US presidential election has seen global equities soar. However, European shares turned negative after an initial bounce as investors considered the impact of Trump's proposed tariffs on the global economy. Stocks on Wall Street jumped to a new record high with investors anticipating lower taxes and deregulation. The Dow and S&P 500 notching their biggest one-day gains in 2 years, while the small-cap Russell 2000 rallied almost 6%. And the VIX Volatility Index dropping some 5 points to its lowest level since September. But the US dollar and Treasury yields surged on the risk that Trump's policies could lead to a larger budget deficit and higher inflation. The Republicans' win powered a rally in Trump trades, with Trump Media and Tech Group rallying, along with Tesla, which leapt more than 14%. Tesla chief executive Elon Musk has been a financial supporter of the Trump campaign and is expected to play a part in the new administration. The strong gains were also made by shares of cryptocurrency companies as crypto prices leapt higher, while energy companies and prison operators also benefited, whereas renewable energy shares fell. Financials rose, with the banks expected to benefit from loosening regulations, and shares in US chip firms rose, with Donald Trump having vowed to impose 60% duties on imports from China. Well, Donald Trump's emphatic victory triggered a sell-off of US Treasury, sending yields surging to multi-month highs as his win stoked bets on economic policy shifts that could boost deficits and inflation. It's also put renewed focus on the US Federal Reserve, and if its rate-cutting cycle will come to an abrupt end, it reveals its latest policy decision tonight and is expected to cut by another 25 basis points. Markets are also watching to see if the Republican Party maintains a majority in the House of Representatives, as well as gaining control of the US Senate, which would potentially clear the way for Trump to fully implement his policies. The 10-year Treasury yield rose as much as 18 basis points to 4.47%. And the US dollar has soared to a 4-month high. The Eurozone, Mexico, China and Canada viewed as being at risk of those potential new tariffs, which has seen their currencies tumble. And the potential impact on global trade and the Australian economy now also been assessed, the Aussie dollar falling to 65.7 US cents. And commodity prices, they've also come under pressure. Oil prices eased on the stronger dollar despite the prospect that Donald Trump's foreign policy plans could squeeze global oil supplies. Brent crude futures falling to $74 a barrel. Elsewhere, as traders consider the impact of tariffs and a possible trade war, copper tumbling 5%, iron ore down more than 2% to $103 a tonne, and the gold price falling 3% to $2,660 an ounce, pressured by a higher dollar and those bond yields. And Bitcoin surging to a new record. Was close to 76,000 US dollars, with a new Trump administration seen as softening cryptocurrency regulation. So let's unpack it all. There is lots to unpack. Ira Epstein joining us from Linn Associates. Ira, welcome back. Goodness, so speculation, this was going to be a drawn-out affair in terms of the result. Anything but a decisive victory. How would you describe that market response?
More or less a decisive loss for the Democrats is the way that it's being actually played in the United States. It's not so much about the victory, really. They're talking about how the Democrats got it wrong, how the policies were wrong, how switching to Harris when the time was done was wrong, how they were not paying attention to rising prices and the impact on the U.S. consumer wrong. So they handed, if you will, a victory to President Trump that none of the pollsters got right. I mean, in America, the pollsters, up until the night of the election, we were thinking it would be 2 days before we could even know what's going to go on. There was talk, would it be a contested election? Then there was a lot of talk, what happens if it's a tie in the Electoral College, because it was going to be so close. And it proved to be anything but close. Now, the Senate in the U.S. is being taken as a Republican party now. That's how it is on all the broadcast stations. They're saying that that has gone to the Republicans. It is up in the air as to who's going to control the House, and we don't expect to see that for about 2 or 3 days. But Today was the risk, if you will, on momentum in a lot of the markets. You know, the fear of missing out on the stock market, as you said, Bitcoin, because of the way that President Trump, ex-President Trump, President-elect Trump, which name do you want, is favoring Bitcoin. Tesla soared today, 30 some odd dollars, and that is because we are looking at the possibility of removing that $7,500 that the Biden administration was giving for new purchases of electric cars, which puts Tesla in a beautiful shape. And I was just in Los Angeles looking at those new Waymo cars that have been around where they drive you automatically. It's amazing when you see it, and his will be very different. They won't be full of all the cameras sticking out everywhere that looks like an old-time police car. It's very strange, but it works.
All right, so that Trump trade very much in play.
Right.
Ira, what do we know of his policies? How much is bluster? How much is he likely to actually put in place?
Well, I can answer that. Was he bluster when he was president? The answer is no. He wasn't bluster. If he told you he was going to do something, he generally did it. Now, did he do it in the manner that he originally said? Probably not. He stepped into it as a businessman. So what he first does is he scares you, then he does something to show you what he's about to do, and then he does it. So if I were China, I'd be very concerned that the tariffs that he's talking about could happen if they don't come to the table and do whatever he says he wants them to do. That doesn't mean they'll go in all the way. He'll negotiate. He's a businessman. But if you don't believe the tariffs are coming, you're making a mistake. If you believe that they're going to be 100% tariffs the way he said, you're probably making a mistake there too. That's probably too high. So they'll start off lower where they have to, and then he'll boost them up. As for the rest of the plan, such as taxes and so on, that's his campaign. He's going to try to push that through right away. And obviously, if he gets control of Congress, it'll be a much easier task. Still hard, but a task that he can get done, because just because you're a Republican doesn't mean you'll vote for everything that a Republican president says.
So those policies seen largely as boosting the budget deficit and being inflationary, does that make the Fed's job that much harder?
Real hard. But what the Fed will look at is what's their policy on the short term, not the long term. So what the market is now doing, and remember, it's 24 hours of this, but the reality is, since the September rate cut, interest rates in the United States have been one directional, and that is that the yields have gone higher. They haven't yet peaked out, but I think we're close. Closing today, I think the cash close in the 10-year note was around 4.43. I'm guessing it won't go more than 5%, so that's a half a point from here if it can go that much higher. Is the market overdoing things? Absolutely. Is it getting ahead of itself on a one day like this? Absolutely. So those that are buying into the stock market at these levels and thinking we're going to the moon, I wouldn't want to do that. I'd use the pullbacks in the market to see where you're at, realize that there's a lot of money on the side that wants to come in, and you go there. As for the gold, it was just a question of when it would give a bid up here. It hasn't given up enough to scare me off, I will tell you that. In fact, if anything, I'm looking at where can I add to the gold, and one reason why. Inflation won't go away under Trump. What the trick will be is, can he get the economy to grow enough over time to compensate for the inflation when he's going to increase government spending, when he's going to reduce tax revenue, when he's hoping that he can get the economy spurring on, which is demand. Demand creates inflation. So I see an inflation argument that the Fed has problems with, and we'll see tomorrow. Tomorrow, the Fed doesn't have to make a decision. It cuts 25 basis points. It says it'll be interesting to watch. They're still going to be data dependent, and that's where I think the chair will leave that.
How do you view the energy sector, Ira? Particularly, we've heard that refrain from him. Drill, baby, drill.
Yeah.
Wants to increase local production.
I think you jump into Baker Hughes and stocks like that, Schlumberger. I think you look at all the companies that can help produce more. Because the one thing we know that under Trump is America's going back to energy independence. The Biden administration was determined to get us away from that. They were much more green than you will see the Trump administration being, please, everybody, understand something. This is a man that's in his late 70s. He's got 4 years to prove what he's going to leave is a legacy. Every day that goes by will not be a day where he sits in his office and wonders what he should do down the road. These are things he's going to be rushing at. He's no longer a neophyte president. He's got 4 years under his belt. He's got political savvy. He's probably had the most bad things thrown at him that any human being, let alone a president, can have in political life and in public life. So just think about it. So all these law cases, well, they'll be gone. He'll just pardon himself. He'll probably pardon a lot of the people, as he said, that he believes should be. But he's going to do what he said. So on energy, I'd be a bit cautious here. I'm not as bullish on crude as I am on the service companies because pipelines, more drilling, I think he'll be very pro that.
And just quickly, Ira, outside of the US, what's the prospect, particularly, I guess, you look at Europe, also emerging markets under a Trump presidency?
Well, we did see that, remember, he went after Canada, he went after Mexico with tariffs. So outside of the U.S., the first country that I think you get concerned with for tariffs is on our border right with Mexico. All these companies that thought they would build factories, get around the fact, oh, we're doing it in Mexico, we're assembling, whatever. It's going to be looked at very, very hard. And that's why the peso at one point got hit pretty good today. China's obviously on the horizon. Ukraine, he's made it known. Ukraine's going to have to give up land if they want to get U.S. support going forward. In other words, the president is going to try to find a solution to get this done very quickly. It's probably the first thing he's going to try to get done. It emboldens Israel in the Middle East, which I think is exactly what the president-elect wants to see now. And that means that you've got a different situation. That's why it's hard to call oil itself. It's easier to call the service companies as far as I'm concerned. But Ukraine, you got to look at very hard. And I'm guessing that unlike the Biden administration was giving money to just keep the stalemate going as best as they could, as a businessman, Trump's going to say that's got to come to an end. And at the end of the day, that's what I would expect. A quick resolution where the land that Russia has captured ends up in their hands.
All right. Thanks for joining us from Linn Associates.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's focus now locally when we get going in just a couple of minutes' time. We are expecting to open higher SPI futures around 0.4% in the green there. And stay with us because the open is just a couple of minutes away.